Hello, I'm Liam Fogarty. My guest today is a performer, a campaigner, and, according to those who work with her, an inspiration. For many years, she ran DaDaFest here in Liverpool. The festival is the UK's biggest celebration of disability and deaf arts. She remains its creative director, and she is Ruth Gould. Ruth, you're very welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
When did you have your artistic epiphany? When did you decide that the arts was what you wanted to be involved in?
It was actually after my first child was born. I was 23 and felt a little bit overweight, and I heard of a dance school that was doing exercises classes, and I went along and found I could do things with my body. Most people couldn't, like, put my leg up by my ear, but as a deafened person, I've always been very expressive physically, and I got into mime and physical theatre. And I auditioned when I was 23, 24 to go to a theatre course at Liverpool Theatre School, which I did for 2 years full time. It was fantastic.
Because you'd had a lot of kind of various jobs and you weren't getting much satisfaction in the workplace. What was it about the dance and the movement that kind of opened your eyes to this new life that you could lead?
You find something in your life, it just goes, ding, that's you. That's where you want to be. You can't really describe it, you just know this is what makes you get up in the morning, this is what gives you life. And I just found being able to perform, take ideas onto a stage, but also workshops with people and see them finding and exploring things about themselves, it just really made me excited.
Just how valuable is artistic endeavour and creative activity in bringing people who have a disability into what, for better or worse, we call the mainstream?
That's a big question. There's so many different ways people can find themselves through the arts, because there's so many different art forms. I mean, my background was particularly in performance, and I actually worked a lot with speech and drama as well, so I did a lot of vocal work and things. And for me as a deaf person, trying to understand how you create speech helped me be clearer in the way I communicate. So those sort of things just increase your self-confidence. And then when you start to see the talent you can have in different things, it can really make you feel excited about what you can give into life. And I think for me as a disabled person, I felt written off a lot. I wasn't supposed to get a job. Every job I went for, I couldn't do. So I was drifting in and out of admin sort of things. So finding the arts gave me a real voice, and I may not have gone into the arts, but what it gave me confidence to think I can contribute widely into life. So it depends where people want to go with it, really.
It's one thing to perform and express yourself. It's quite another to organise and try to campaign and to, represent people with a disability.
Yeah.
Was that kind of flair for organisation and for advocacy something you always had?
I think it must have been. I remember I found some reports from school, and one of the teachers, deputy head, actually wrote I had leadership potential, and I never really thought I did, because I thought I was quite quiet and withdrawn. But I think when I have an idea, I like to see it through, and so that element is probably part of my character that's always been there. But I just want to say, when I went into the arts and my training, I was trying to hide the fact that I was disabled. I wasn't very proud of it, and I did everything I could to hide it. And I think that's why I got into acting, because I was able to go, oh yes, oh no, I meant, because you read people's faces. So I actually, I didn't come across an empowered model of disability until I was in my mid-30s.
Do you think that's quite common with people with a disability, that they want to pretend that everything's normal? Yeah. And aren't willing to kind of say, actually, I'm different, but yeah, I'm also just as valuable as you are?
I think there's been definitely a generational shift over the years, but for my sort of experience in the 60s and 70s, it was always a problem. There was a fight with my parents to keep me in mainstream school. I should go to deaf school because I couldn't amount to anything. Those sort of conversations were in my life. So I'd always grown up with a negative and a stigma about being a deaf person. And it also depends on what your impairment is. If it's more obvious, you can't hide it. So you're out there. But if you have something like mine, which is more of an invisible impairment, a lot of people in the same ilk could try to pretend it's not there. And then we get to a point like I did, where it's like, why do I feel like this? Then I realised society puts a lot of that sort of pressure on you to be better than you think you are and things.
There's a big ongoing discussion, isn't there, about the language that people use to describe people who have a disability.
Yeah.
And even people with the best intentions, people like me, get it wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
So you give us a kind of brief list of do's and don'ts for people who do not have a disability about how you interact with and describe and engage with someone who does have a disability.
Context is everything. One of the biggest problems we've had as disabled people is we've been defined by our medical conditions, and often those labels can go before you, and they're not particularly empowering labels, because people will always sort of compare worst case scenarios with a medical condition. By using the term disabled people, we're aligning to what we call a social model of disability, which says we're disabled by the societal constructs, the fact that few of us get the qualifications we need for life, the good life choices. For me, if there's no hearing loop or lip speaker in conferences or theatre or on this film, I'm disabled by that environment.
So it's not the condition,
Yes,
it's not the actual impairment, it's how everyone else responds to it.
Because our private medical conditions are our own. We don't want them displayed and put out there. And each of us have a different way of having our impairment manifest. One of the things I as an organisation, we've written up policies about the words we feel comfortable using. We don't ever say we have a disability, because often you don't just have one. You know, we live with multiple disabling environments, but also our impairments. We're not tidy people. We don't just live with a thing. You know, it's seeing disability in a wider context.
But for people like you who have impaired hearing, there's quite a fierce debate, isn't there, about how you describe yourself. And are you actually part of a deaf community that's an identifiable group? Tell us a bit about how that plays out.
Yeah, deaf community is a very proud community, and their first language is sign. I'm not part of the deaf community, even though I'm deaf. I'm deaf, I consider, with a small d, because my first language is English. But my friends who sign as their first language, they see themselves as a cultural minority that needs acknowledgement. And that's one of the reasons we say DaDaFest, because we acknowledge deaf culture is different. You create theatre in a different way. Even visual artists will make art very much on the way hands are used. And so it's appreciating the different contexts of how people will live their lives as disabled or deaf people. So deaf culture is something we need to acknowledge and celebrate.
And you've been doing this kind of thing for about 3 decades now. How have society's attitudes changed towards disability?
Well, I know the kind of 30 years ago, I was hiding the fact that I was a deaf person because I felt stigmatised. When people knew, I used to get put down quite vocally, particularly in the theatre world. You know, I didn't sound right. When people are trained into how they use the voice, they would see there was a sort of flattening to the way I created sounds, and it was mocked and things. So for me personally, I've seen that big change happen. I know I didn't get jobs because people would know I was deaf and things. So now to actually be where I am, I just can't believe that I ever would have been able to develop this through the things that society sees as wrong with me. I don't actually see them as wrong. I actually quite enjoy being a deaf person, and we don't get those stories.
But do you think it's easier for, say, a teenager who has a disability like you have, or another impairment, to do what they want to do to carve their own path in life than it
It's still a struggle. It's not easy, but it's better. There's still a lot of misunderstanding and stigma. And I think an issue like deafness, or something that's very sort of easy to comprehend, there can be more understanding and support. But for example, my daughter's on the autism spectrum at 16. We've had battle all the way through school, and people don't get the social behavioural context of some of the impairment issues that people live with. So I think, you know, it is sort of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We're all learning all the time, but the ability to understand and get alongside people is more apparent than it's ever been before.
Do you think things like the Paralympic movement and London 2012, which provide a fantastic showcase for some people with disabilities, do you think they do more harm than good because they set unreasonable expectations for people with disabilities to meet?
That's definitely one of the things that we have seen, like disability hate crime has been on the increase because the media really picked up on these incredibly achieving disabled people who are athletes in their own right. You know, whether you're disabled or not, a lot of people, they're at the top of their game and we can't all compete at that level. So we have had some real issues with how the backlash for us has been that we can all achieve, we can all do those things, and we're just the rhetoric around us being benefits grounders who are just wanting to stay at home and not work has increased, and that's not been good.
Why the connection? Because you've got incredibly positive role models, and yet a lot of negativity in society. What's the mismatch?
Where the focus has been. We haven't seen a balanced focus. We seem to have been pushed to extremes, either achieving flying brilliant disabled people who can get all these gold medals, or people who are sort of scroungers who are taking all the welfare system away. We're not seen as ordinary everyday people. If you actually still look at mainstream media, we're not really represented fully. As like in the Merseyside area, 33% of us are disabled or living with long-term impairments. But you wouldn't think that from the marketing you see.
We've got so much to talk about. We have to take a break. Ruth Gould, thank you so far. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back. I'm Liam Fogarty, and today I'm meeting Ruth Gould, who is Artistic Director of DaDaFest, the UK's biggest celebration of disability and deaf arts. Ruth, the most recent DaDaFest was at the turn of the year. How did it go?
Oh, it's amazing. And it's still going on because we've still got 3 displays in National Museums, Liverpool and Victoria Galleries. Up to our count on the 18th of February, we had 223,000 people through activities, which is phenomenal. So it has been our most successful festival so far.
Now, it's staged every 2 years. It used to be an annual event. Yeah. Why did you go from 1 year to 2?
Because I couldn't remember what year was what. It was just this absolute whirlwind of activity constantly, and we couldn't keep it up, especially as the funding situation started to change with Arts Council reorganisation and things. There's more to do, and we needed to actually make sure we could deliver a good festival, and we weren't just sort of trying to fight to keep things going. So under the support of the Arts Council, we decided to become more international and go every 2 years.
You mentioned funding. Every arts organisation, every arts organiser seems to be agonising about where the next pound is going to come from. Yeah. Has Liverpool been good to DaDaFest in terms of, say, public sector support and private sector support?
This wouldn't exist without Liverpool. That's one of the great things. We are a radical city who do radical things and try and include minority groups. And so we really immerse in Liverpool. And right from the word go, we've had support from Liverpool, and that's increased with the success of our festival. Unlike other cities, the whole arts sector has been completely supported and put in a really good place within the city's offer, not just for culture, but to actually see how it encourages more investment into the city and more employment.
Are you a little disappointed, perhaps, that there aren't more DaDaFest type things happening in the UK as a whole? Because the sense is, well, Liverpool, yeah, we know how to do it, but actually other cities and other countries don't do it quite so well.
Well, I mean, we developed because we saw a need. We weren't seeing our artists employed in mainstream, and that was the root of DaDaFest. We didn't expect it to be more than 1 year because our programmes have been developed in Liverpool since 1984, so we've got a long history as an organisation here. As we developed, people have come alongside us and said, oh, this is incredible, you are leading the way. And we needed to try and understand that. What does that mean? So we have taken DaDaFest into different parts of the country and helped with developing understanding and how to do a festival of our nature into other countries. So it's been exciting to see that we're able to give from our learning into helping other people do what they do. Because in most places, disabled people are a hidden community, and DaDaFest exposes disability culture in a big way that excites people.
And on the back of the success of DaDaFest, one of the things you do is travel the world, crisscrossing the globe, spreading the message of disability and deaf arts. Just give us an idea, where have you been this year, Ruth?
This year already I've been to Finland, Qatar, and just come back from Grand Rapids on Friday in Michigan, USA. So that's quite exciting. Last year it was India, South Africa, Malawi, America. It is weird, and it's all because of DaDaFest. People want to know how we do it and want to learn from us.
Now, you mentioned Qatar. You say Qatar to most people, they'll think of the World Cup in 2022. Was your visit related to all that activity?
In a way, it was a conference on disability and what the country needs to think about, because different cultures have very different understanding around disability, and there can be a lot of stigma and underground sort of activity with disabled people. So Qatar, as part of the World Cup, has to do some wheelchair football, and they're just not ready as a country to really include disabled people at the moment. So the conference was organised by British Council and one of the biggest oil companies in the world, to look at issues that they need to do to change the infrastructure there. But also I was chairing a panel on how the arts are a vehicle for social change, and it was so powerful. I do think it was the best panel out of the whole two-day conference, because it really started engaging with issues and got people excited that they can do it.
When you go to these other cities and other countries, are there things which inspire you that they do and that we should? And are there things that shock you?
I wouldn't say, yeah, there is. Yeah, there's shock. There are some things at the extremes. Sometimes you think the wealthy countries are really going to have it right, and that can be quite scary. One of the countries I was in recently, disabled people are kind of pensioned off at 16 and not supposed to be part of mainstream society. So they've got the funding to live and be looked after, etc., but they're not expected to have any say or empowerment within their society, which I thought was quite shocking. Whereas I've been to Congo, and they are the poorest country in the world, and to see disabled and deaf people really using their arts to make a presence, to celebrate their lives through festivals and on the street entertainment in a way that really exposes who they are in their society was very inspirational.
But money in the UK is tight. The resources aren't there in the numbers that they used to be. Can you keep going at the level and with the quality that you're used to?
Well, because we've reorganised the company, we are actually able to think ahead more strategically about what we want to do. So we're looking at bigger funding opportunities than we ever did before, big national and international opportunities. So we've got a few bids in there, which are going to, if we're successful, will really build into the programme for next year. But we've just got to keep going. It's the energy to find them and be able to write those bids. That's quite labour intensive.
And this summer in 2015, there's Young Dada,
Yes.
the festival for young people with disabilities. What kind of things can people expect to see there?
Well, they're going to be doing a performance at the Everyman Theatre on the 26th of May. It's quite exciting because it's a showcase of all their workshops. The young people have their own working group, 20 of them, and they decide what goes in. People are auditioned, so it's not just any work that's on there. A lot of people think there's a lot of R factor around disability. We just expose arts for the sake of it, but actually we want the quality, and we want people to actually challenge themselves about how they create the art and what they see. The experience of it is just fantastic. The tickets will probably, they're not on sale now, they'll be on sale soon, but people to come along, just fill the Everyman. And it's exciting we've got the Everyman because we couldn't have done it before. It was newly built, so it's more accessible now, and that's exciting for our young people.
Is it the movement that you're involved in? Is it its aspiration that there will come a point where it'll just be dance and art and performance? It won't be disability dance, disability art,
Because
disability
I always say, if we're doing our job right, we will not be saying we're disabled people in the future, because we will be included. We will be valued as dancers. Unfortunately, we're judged by our impairments. We're judged at a standard that we can't always get people to actually see beyond the technical forms of dance. Can mean if you're a wheelchair user and you do dance, people won't give you any credibility. But actually how you may be able to use your wheelchair could be really exciting and different. And so it's trying to look at the strengths that we have as disabled people and dare to call ourselves artists, people who can challenge the perceptions of what we think art is. We kind of say we're the last avant-garde because we're taking art from a very different place and showing how exciting and new it can be. But also within our work, there's that we never stop that social justice fight, you know, to change perceptions around how they view disability, not just the them and us culture, to actually embrace disability as a human issue, that you're either disabled or you're not disabled yet. It's inevitable as we get older. So we need to have an opinion about it.
If you think about what the most powerful art form is, it's probably TV and movies. There are increasingly common representations of people with disabilities in mainstream soaps and dramas and so on. Do you think TV and films, are they getting it right, or have they got a way to go?
They've got a way to go. It's been really good for us. For example, Coronation Street, we've had a long relationship with them. We've had disabled writers working with their team and actors that have gone into there through we've worked with, and having an influence in that way. It's been really good. But we still see people try and do it without really thinking through the realism of depicting someone with disabilities, that they are actually go for the stereotype rather than the truth of how you live with impairments. And we want to see that challenge more, and not the Oscar winners all the time.
And shows and indeed films still cast people who are not disabled in roles that you might think would be better filled by someone who actually knows what it's like.
Exactly.
When you see that, do you think that's setting the cause back, or do you think actually, in a strange way, it's maybe pushing the cause forward?
I mean, it does depend on the context of what the film is, you know, because it's been up and down. Like the Stephen Hawking ones are really sort of been interesting because it showed the progression of his illness. It was interesting listening to Eddie Redmayne talk that how much research he did and how much he worked with Stephen Hawking to depict that. That was a move in itself. That would never have happened a few years ago. Someone would have just thought, oh, I know how to do this, and not really put it into a context. So that thinking's a bit better because disabled people are at the heart of the conversation around how to depict them. But still, it's too many where it's that, again, a stereotype of what people think disabled people would do and how they think they would be if they were disabled, and that's not the truth.
Does this whole struggling against adversity to ultimate victory narrative, does it cheese you off?
Yeah, it does. I hate the whole thing about we're overcoming our disabilities. We just want to live. We're just human beings who want to get on, and we want to stop being labelled by our impairments. We just want to be seen as Ruth or Charlie or Ahmed, whatever we are, whoever we are.
And very briefly, what next for DaDaFest?
Well, it's exciting. We're developing the next festival for November, December. There's some very exciting artists I'm talking with internationally, which I think will raise the bar again. We are involved very much with national developments, with disability arts, with the Arts Council and other things. And I'd like to keep on having that sort of a place to talk and have the dialogue around what we do to change, to be more inclusive. I really want to grow it more in Liverpool. I'm never going to rest until I know all people are really getting involved with it. So, yeah, just keep on doing more of the same.
Well, Ruth, keep on doing it. Thank you very much for talking to me. I've been Liam Fogarty. Thanks for watching.